Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give people a few more minutes to join, and then we'll get started. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today for our informational session on current legislation. I'm going to have our other panelists turn on their video, please, while I do some introductions. We're just waiting for one more panelist to join us. Hopefully he'll be along soon. My name is Heidi Brennigan. I'm with Animal Emergency and Referral Center of Minnesota. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at AERC. And with me today is Colleen Crockford. She's going to help facilitate the discussion and be the keeper of the time. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce the rest of our panel. So we have Ann Olson joining us today. She will be speaking about the Office of Animal Protection as well as the Companion Animal Board Bill. Ann is the founder and executive director of Animal Folks, which is a nonprofit organization with a mission to protect animals and people through sustainable reform of the Minnesota criminal and civil justice systems. In her role, she has led multiple initiatives to enhance animal protection and welfare, including the compilation and analysis of over 1,800 animal cruelty cases in the state of Minnesota, and development of training curriculum and materials on animal cruelty. Prior to founding Animal Folks, Ms. Olson worked as a writer and a business strategist in California, Minnesota, and Hong Kong. We also have Dr. Emily Asleson, if you want to give a wave, Dr. Asleson. Dr. Emily works for MinSnap, which is a high-volume, high-quality spay-neuter clinic serving families in need who have limited access to veterinary care. With their mobile surgery unit, her clinic works with clients from around the state. I'm going to check and see if Dr. Belay has joined us so that I can promote him to panelist.
Heidi, he's showing up also under Kim's name on my screen.
Oh, okay. So that's okay. Hi, Dr. Al. Let me we'll take a moment and we'll rename you in just a sec, but that's not imperative at the moment. Wonderful. Let me continue then. Dr. Alan Belay is the chairperson of the Minnesota Veterinary Medical Association's Veterinary Technician Committee. He teaches at Ridgewater College in Wilmer, part-time in the vet tech program, and performs all of the surgeries. Dr. Belay and his wife Claudia co-own a 12-horse stable with another couple in New London, Minnesota, where he is the resident veterinarian. Last but not least is Kim Horn. Kim Horn spent most of her career at the University of Minnesota Veterinary Medical Center, where she found her passion in dermatology. This led to speaking and authoring opportunities, and she became co-founder of the Academy of Dermatology Veterinary Technicians. Although Kim recently retired, she is still very active in her state and national vet tech associations, and she continues to work on getting Minnesota veterinary technicians added to the State Veterinary Practice Act, which we will be talking about today. So welcome to all of you. What we're going to do for the meeting today is we'll go through the 3 pieces of legislation one at a time. We will take questions at the end of each one. So if you have a specific question about a specific piece of legislation, just hold on to that until we're discussing it. And we will get those as we go. Colleen has the unenviable position of being our timekeeper today. I relinquish that duty to her as it is not my forte. So she will be letting our speakers know when their time is almost up, as well as they have the schedule in front of them, but she'll give you a little nudge if you're getting close to your time. And that's our format. So like I said, if you have your questions, you can type those in the chat, and we will get to those at the appropriate time for each piece of legislation. So I'm going to turn off my camera, and I believe we're talking about the Office of Animal Protection first. Anne, if you would like to get us started.
Sure. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, it says the can't start video because the host has stopped it. I don't know if you're able to check that.
Yeah, hang on just a sec. I'm gonna make you a co-host, so that will resolve that issue.
There you go. You know it. Okay, I'll share screen.
Yes, please.
Great. Are you able to see it?
Sure can. Thank you.
Yes. Would you like me to begin?
Please do.
Okay. Thank you so much to the Animal Emergency and Referral Center for allowing this Zoom meeting to present these bills. My name is Anne, and I'm with a group called Animal Folks. The first bill that I'm going to be talking about is the Office of Animal Protection Bill. I'll really spend only 5 minutes on this, but it'll give you an idea. The first thing to know is the bill has not yet been introduced. We are waiting for it. The Minnesota legislature is so busy right now with so many bills that it's backed up in research as well as the revisor's office. So we are waiting for it. Once it gets introduced, and we will have the bill numbers. Authors will be Scott Dibble, Senator, and then Representative Matt Norris. The focus of this particular bill is animal protection and the link to human violence. Now, many of you have probably already seen or suspected animal cruelty. It's horrific in itself, but it can also be linked to child abuse, elder abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence, and other crimes. So this type of organization then, or office, when dealing with animal cruelty, it's often the first foot in the door to be able to also address human violence. Now, why it is needed, this is something that we have been studying for well over a decade, and we have over 1,800 animal cruelty case convictions, so we've been able to do analysis. We find that there does need for enhanced enforcement of animal cruelty statutes, focused leadership, because these cases can be quite complex, requiring many different disciplines. Second point is really accountability. While many within law enforcement, humane agents, prosecutors, and others are always well-meaning and well-intentioned. We still believe there needs to be mandated training and oversight to be able to give authorities the tools they need. Resources, you may have seen in your own community, sometimes cruelty cases don't get pursued because it's too costly to seize the animals. So it will address that. Centralized data, also sometimes people are not familiar with who to report it to, or where data can be consolidated in order to really figure out patterns of crimes. And then prevention measures. All criminal law also starts with prevention, how to look at antisocial behavior, violence, and intervention programs. So again, every issue such as this starts with purpose. The purpose of the Office of Animal Protection will be to assist local, state, tribal, and federal agencies in the prevention, investigation, and prosecution of animal cruelty laws. Keyword here is assist. They're not taking over, they're assisting authorities with the enforcement of these laws. Focus is animal cruelty, which is criminal law. This is not civil law, it's criminal law, and it has a very tight scope dealing with animal cruelty. And also animals, this is huge because it applies to all animals. The animal cruelty statute has been since 1905 defining animals as all living creatures except members of the human race. So this office will apply not just to pets, but all living creatures. Key structure, it will be under the Department of Public Safety, mainly because that's the most appropriate department. They deal with criminal law, and this issue is about public safety. It will also have a unified command structure. What we're finding, again, based on research, is the case is not just about investigations. You also need prosecutors who understand animal law and can be given assistance. Key veterinary forensics, which is why we were thankful to present this to you, because veterinary forensics, how a veterinarian examines an animal and compiles a report, can really make or break a case. We are also putting in money to be able to fund a pathologist at the VDL lab, the lab at the University of Minnesota, really to focus on forensic necropsies, because those two are important to cruelty. Human welfare, because again, the link to human violence, so social workers or a mental health professional to coordinate that, and animal care. When you seize animals, where do you put them? These kind of facilities too need to be consolidated and reviewed. And then there will be regional response units throughout Minnesota. So basically, just a recap, and I know this is a pretty fast presentation of this, but from investigation and prosecution, assisting in that, training and auditing, reporting, data, cost of care, resources, prevention measures, all of which, of course, will require revenues, but by establishing an office, it allows this collaboration and discussion to begin. So that's it for the Office of Animal Protection. Again, this hasn't been introduced. There is another competing bill that was introduced with the exact same name. This is not that bill. This is a different bill. We're still waiting for the language, and it will be authored by Dibble and Norris. So thank you for allowing the opportunity to present this. And Heidi, do we have questions?
There's a question about the competing legislation, so we included a link to that so people can find more information about that piece of legislation.
Okay. Anything more, or would you like me to go to the next one?
While we're waiting, why don't you go ahead and proceed?
So Anne, if you want to go ahead, we're not getting any new questions about the Office of Animal Protection. So if you want to go ahead in the interest of time, and if there are some other questions that pop in, we can ask them during the next Q&A.
Okay, wonderful.
Mhm.
Okay, bill, second bill, this bill is completely separate and has a whole different purpose than the Office of Animal Protection. So this is completely different. It's the Companion Animal Board Bill, and many of you may have already heard about it. This bill has already been introduced at the Minnesota legislature, and the bill numbers and authors are Senate File 1136. Senator Dibble is authoring this as well in the Senate, and House File 1168 with Representative Freiberg. Senator Dibble did see the difference of needing one bill that deals with cruelty and all animals, and this bill, Companion Animal, that deals with civil law and pets only. We are Animal Folks has been working on this for a number of years together with the Animal Humane Society and numerous other organizations. So I thought I'd start first with the definition of companion animal. Under statute, companion animal is actually the same as pet. So if I use the two terms, they're interchangeable. The definition is in state law under 343 and 346, which is cited in this bill. Now, I did want to just read actually the definition. Pet or companion animal includes any animal owned, possessed by, cared for, or controlled by a person for the present or future enjoyment of that person or another as a pet or companion, or any stray pet or stray companion animal. So we are talking about pet and companion animal, not animals purchased to be eaten or used for some other activity. Now, we wanted to also make sure that this is a little more clear. So the bill this year also put in additional language and it specifically excludes, and that's in lines 2.21 to 26. It excludes cattle, sheep, swine, goats, farm cervidae, poultry, or other animals used for food, agricultural products, or other agricultural uses. It also excludes wild animals, and often, as you may know, within law, you refer to existing law. Wild animals is defined under 97A, race horses, pursuant to Chapter 240, and regulated animals. So those are like pet tigers and primates. That's under 346. That is within the bill, trying to make it even clearer. Okay, so why is the CAB bill needed? Two primary reasons. The growth of the pet sector, with which many of you have probably seen, as well as how government is structured. So just to dive into that a little bit, the pet sector has grown significantly. Over 70% of households have at least one pet. Talking with a demographer, we were told that Minnesota's households have more pets than children. And many people, as you know, consider these animals to be family. And the pet industry financially has increased by 93 billion in the past decades. And pets, again, play new roles in people's health and well-being. They truly provide companionship. Now, what we have found in our research is that more pets bring more pet issues. I'm not going to go over all of these, but for instance, under social services, we were just talking with a director who runs a human shelter, and she was saying that people who lose their home or apartment come to them, and they may have a dog, a cat, 2 guinea pigs, and it becomes a huge issue for those in the social services. What do we do with these pets? The CAB could be able to help lead discussions and find solutions and help coordinate services. Shelters and rescues and other nonprofits, talking with rescue groups, for instance, many are supporters of this because they want to increase their standards across the board. within rescue organizations. Veterinary care, we do have a vet advisory board group, a vet advisory group who has been giving us a lot of excellent input. And so we have known, we actually started it because we do know the shortage of vet staff is a real crisis. And then municipalities, we also work with city managers and counties. They have problems with community cats and wondering, what do they do? Who do they call? There's no place to call. The companion animal board would provide that place, that hub to turn to. So another issue is government, how government is structured. Right now, there is no place in state government to house pet-related issues. Right now, government is structured really for animals. Livestock production is under the Department of Ag. Wildlife management is under DNR. And dangerous animal disease is under the Board of Animal Health. There's nothing solely for pets. By that I mean no state agency with a dedicated mission, a purpose, board, staff, expertise solely for pets and those who care for these animals. Which is why then we've worked together with our coalition to create what's called a companion animal board. Now, the purpose of this board, and it's actually on line 2.15 of the bill, the companion animal board is created to promote the welfare of cats, dogs, and other pets, serve those in the community who care for these animals, and support the human-animal bond. So it's really not just pets alone, but it's also people, because these animals provide companionship. So it's people and pets and all of the different organizations, public or private or nonprofit, who help with that. Because it's a board, and it was selected to use a board because Minnesota government chooses boards for a lot of specific issues. So this would be structured as a board. It would have 13 board members. We actually started with 9, but went up to 13 because different people wanted to sit on it. The goal is to be inclusive and diverse. So there are many perspectives. So it's veterinarians, but it's also animal shelters, rescue, municipality, tribal, and specialists in animal-human bond, dog breeder, public. All the members will have expertise with pet or experience with pet welfare. And then the board would hire, as with any other board, executive director and staff. Now, 3 primary duties, and I know I'm going quickly over this bill, but the 3 primary duties would be regulatory authority for these pet issues. 2 laws would be transferred to the companion animal board so they can administer them. 1 is the dog and cat breeder law. 2 is the kennel and dealer law, and that one really licenses animal shelters. And that again is because this board would have expertise with pets. Second duty is communication and education. It would really act as a hub for pet care and pet issues. Be advisors to legislators, authorities, the public, promoting responsible pet ownership. And then the services and resources that would help coordinate and services and resources statewide. It doesn't mean they're going to jump into everything. They're just going to assist and help. They'll start by doing a needs assessment, traveling the state to understand what's going on in different communities, and also then offer grants, which is the next slide. This bill will have a grant-making authority to give grants to nonprofits, which could be shelters or rescues or pet food banks, veterinary clinics and practices, so all of you, municipalities, cities and counties, and academic institutions. Now, again, talking with the vet advisory group, we've been working with them, and so they encouraged and we agreed. We put in 1.5 million over 2 years, so 750,000 each year, dedicated to the vet tech and vet shortage crisis. So clinics could actually apply for these grants and perhaps reimburse training for a kennel assistant becoming a vet tech to help retain staff and attract staff. And anything within state law obviously would be pursuant to existing statutes. So setting up criterion and all of that would follow statute 16B. Now, just what it will not do. We just wanted to highlight a couple of things. We know there have been some statements out there, but we wanted to highlight these. It will not impact veterinary practices. All authority for vet practices still remains with the Board of Vet Medicine. That's pursuant to Chapter 156. It will not impact control of dangerous disease. All authority of dangerous animal disease remains with the Board of Animal Health. That's under their authority of Chapter 35. This is specifically written into the bill, by the way, when I say lines. It won't impact the Board of Animal Health funding for those two laws that are being transferred over. We've actually put in there that all personnel related to that remains with the Board of Animal Health. And it will not impact agriculture. As mentioned, it excludes farm animals, and that's listed. Back to the disease, I did want to mention, as we all know, veterinarians and other people under Chapter 35.06 requires all people to immediately report infectious or contagious disease to the Board of Animal Health. That will continue. CAB will do that just like any other state agency. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Emily Asleson, who's been working with us together with other veterinarians. Emily. Hello?
I'm so sorry.
Oh, no.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Anne. As you said, my name is Dr. Emily Asleson, and I work for MinSnap, which is a nonprofit organization that provides accessible and affordable spay and neuter services to pets of families in need. We also work with rescue partners and assist in TNR efforts for community cats. We're based out of Minneapolis, but our organization has a mobile clinic that travels to various cities and rural locations throughout Minnesota and works with several Indigenous communities. I'm on the Veterinary Advisory Committee to the CAB bill, or for the CAB bill, along with several other veterinarians. We've been meeting roughly every 2 weeks to advise on the bill language and to discuss how a companion animal board would affect those of us in the veterinary field. We recently sent out a letter of support for the bill. If you did not receive our letter and would like a copy, please feel free to contact the meeting organizers with your email address. I first started learning about the companion animal board bill during last year's legislative session and became very supportive of it after learning how this bill could provide much needed assistance to those working in the veterinary field, not only with grants, but also in how we can better assist our clients and our patients. I will just go over 3 main portions of this bill that stand out to me as being critically important. The first is that, as Anne stated, we're all very familiar with the shortage of veterinary technicians in this state, and the vet tech licensure bill will hopefully help address this workforce crisis. The CAB bill includes a grant program to put money toward technician training, and my clinic would be one of the first in line to apply for a grant to encourage training of existing staff and new hires. Additionally, the CAB would be able to provide grants for all kinds of companion animal related needs, including funding to allow access to veterinary care. My second point is that one of the main missions of the CAB is to provide education and outreach across the state. It would be a central place where veterinarians could refer their clients who may be struggling with issues like finding temporary housing for their pets, locating regional pet food banks, identifying affordable veterinary care options, and on and on. For example, we regularly hear about situations where pet owners simply cannot afford treatment for treatable conditions, or where people find themselves with limited resources to help the stray cats that end up on their property, or where clients facing new pet restrictions from apartment management worry about whether they'll be able to keep their pet. The CAB would be able to assist with these types of problems so that more pets could be kept in loving homes and out of overburdened shelters. And the third and final point I'll make is that as a small animal veterinarian, I think one of the most important aspects of this bill is the fact that it puts the commercial breeder and kennel laws under the jurisdiction of a board that's 100% dedicated to pet welfare. These are laws that apply to large-scale commercial breeding operations and animal shelters. Some commercial dog breeding facilities in this state have more than 1,000 dogs and puppies. The CAB would employ small animal veterinarians and others who specialize in the fields of animal behavior and animal sheltering to ensure facilities are licensed and inspected according to standards that account for physical, social, and mental well-being of animals. I'm happy to talk more with anyone interested in learning more about this bill. And I also encourage everyone to reach out to their own legislators right now to show support from the veterinary community. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr. Emily. Now, I thought we'd shift if there are any questions. And by the way, if you would like to learn any more about this bill, the Companion Animal Board bill, there is a website, mincab.org.
Okay, we'll give people a moment. Meanwhile, I was sent a couple of questions in advance of the seminar because we did solicit from the referring community. Question 1, would the CAB play a role in prosecuting things like cockfighting or dog fighting?
No, it would not. The Companion Animal Board is strictly about civil law, regulatory law, and pet welfare issues. Things having to do with criminal law, animal cruelty, investigations, prosecution, charging would be under the Office of Animal Protection. That's why there are two bills with two separate purposes. Again, the CAB is pet only, civil law, animal. The Office of Animal Protection is criminal law, all species.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Is there a place for CAB to benefit pets owned by victims of domestic violence or pets affected by natural disasters?
Okay, natural disasters, I'll start with that one. Yes, that's actually listed in the language as an example of what the CAB can assist with. So obviously, depending on funding, but it has the authority to assist with emergency and natural disasters. Regarding, what was the second one? Domestic violence?
Yeah.
Victims of domestic violence. Yes, because remember, the purpose is about the bond between animals and humans, people and pets. There's a huge bond that victims may have with their pets. And it's been documented that sometimes the victims of domestic violence will not leave their home for fear of what will happen to their pets. So the CAB can address that through grant making, discussion, conversation, to be able to keep that bond together.
Okay. Is a feral cat considered a pet?
Yes, it is. When I was reading the definition for pet or companion animal, under it, it actually says, or stray pet or stray companion animal. One of the things we've seen when talking with some of our supporting groups who really deal with community cat issues is they've described, and maybe many of you have seen this as well, they describe feral cats or community cats as stray cats and treat them just like stray dogs. They're homeless pets, and so this would fall under the CAB as well.
Okay, and then one last one. How would people who own pet goats be affected by CAB?
Yeah, interesting. Pet goats. A lot of people have different types of companions. when I ask questions about specific species, obviously, we still turn to the definitions within the law, like the one that I presented to you earlier. But I also, when it comes to maybe species that aren't as common, like a pet goat, I tend to ask the person a few questions, trying to figure out where it's coming from. So the one would be regulation. Is the person worried about regulation? Because the CAB, as explained, really is only regulating two laws: breeder law for dogs and cats, and the kennel and dealer law, which is for dogs and cats in shelters. So it doesn't regulate anything else. And also, just to stay on that point a little bit, the CAB as a state agency doesn't have authority to create its own laws. So it's not like they could create regulation. That is up to the Minnesota legislature to do. And then the legislature, if they choose to pass a bill into law, will delegate where it goes. So that's one question we kind of hear. Sometimes people are questioning regulation. A second thing is disease. Are they concerned about disease with a pet goat? Disease, again, belongs with the Board of Animal Health. So any animal at all goes to the Board of Animal Health. So the CAB, if they see or suspect anything, would report it to the Board of Animal Health. But that's any owner of any animal as well. But also, just a third is sometimes some people just want to know about pet care and pet tips. Remember, we talked about communication and education. So the CAB could choose to do tips on caring for a pet goat. It could communicate about that. I'm not sure how big the pet goat community is. Most goats are used for farming, but the CAB could choose to do so if they want to for pet care. So I kind of look at it that way. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but it's really kind of coming at it from different points.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and move to the vet tech licensure program. Let me just, Kim or Dr. Belay, which one of you will be sharing your screen?
I know it's going to be Kim if hers works. There she goes.
Okay. Oh, perfect. She's got it going. All right. I'm
Welcome.
going to turn
And
off
we're
my
gonna-
camera and let you guys take it away.
Very good. Thank you. And thanks to AERC for this opportunity. Again, I'm Al Bailey, and I'm going to let Kim start out with the slides.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. I really appreciate it. We do know that licensure is just one piece of the puzzle. There are many pieces that go into the shortage. Back in 2016, a NAFTA shortage or a NAFTA survey showed the average career life expectancy was just 5 to 7 years. And then in 2021, in the fall, JAVMA published an article that said that the career life of a vet tech is now just down to 4 years. In the most recent NAFTA survey, respondents indicated that their top 3 most challenging aspects of their current jobs were low salary, high staff turnover and difficulty retaining staff, as well as a lack of title protection. The lack of title protection aligns with one of the goals of our licensure initiative. Here's where we are at currently in Minnesota. We have about 2,700 voluntarily certified vet techs. In the Minnesota Veterinary Practice Act, only the veterinarian is defined. Everyone else is considered an unlicensed employee. So legally, the part-time high school kennel person is equal to the vet tech that has achieved their VTS. Although Minnesota was progressive with credentialing back in the 1980s, as of January 1st, Minnesota is now one of only 8 states that do not officially regulate vet techs as a profession. Meeting with various stakeholders, they believe that recognition and title protection will help retain veterinary technicians in the career field. So we are choosing to focus on retention as our first puzzle piece. I know there's a lot of information on this slide, and I'm happy to go through it in detail at a later time. But what I want to point out is that our CVT numbers have not seen significant growth since 2017. We hover between the mid 2600s and the mid 2700s. Yet back in 2011, the US Bureau of Labor Statistics had identified vet techs as one of the fastest growing professions. So I would have expected to see our numbers increase. And even though MVMA made exceptions for renewals as well as for lapse certifications during the COVID years, our numbers remained fairly static from 2018 through 2020, showing a net increase of only 10, 8, and 7 CVTs for those years. What is especially concerning is noting the net loss of CVTs we had both in 2021 and 2022. I did want to mention that MVMA is very generous with their voluntary certification. And if you know of any vet techs who have let their certifications lapse, please tell them that they're able to get caught up without having to retake the VTNE. We've seen a fair number of these types of submissions come through, and I'm guessing it's because of the LVT initiative and people are trying to get their certification up to date. And although data is hard to come by, anecdotal evidence shows greater retention and job satisfaction when technicians have a credential. So MVMA and MABT started on a joint effort to propose licensure for veterinary technicians. This licensure is optional. Any team member choosing not to become licensed can continue to do their current job. They will just have to refer to themselves as veterinary assistants. Current CVTs in good standing will be immediately eligible. And then with any new regulatory legislation, this requires a period of time to make the transition. This is known as a grandfather clause, which will have a sunset window. The final grandfather clause is determined by the legislators. What we have suggested to them is that anyone with 4,160 hours of experience, so equivalent to 2 years of full-time employment within the last 5 years, would be eligible, and that the window for this grandfather clause to sunset, we suggested would be 5 years. So if the legislation uses our proposal and the bill does pass this session, it would become effective in 2025. And then these temporary qualifications would be in effect until 2030. So what would applying to licensure with the Board of Veterinary Medicine look like? Well, those current CVTs and those meeting the grandfather clause criteria would be able to apply. They'd fill out an application, pay a fee, take an open book jurisprudence exam, and do a CBC. And that is not a complete blood count. That stands for criminal background check. They would need to submit affidavits from 2 veterinarians and 3 other adults stating that we are ethical and are of good moral character. And the affidavits from veterinarians for our non-CVTs would also need to state that these individuals are competent to work as a veterinary technician. Brand new graduates will also need to submit a copy of their diploma and pass the veterinary technician national exam. The license will be good for 2 years, and then at renewal, a fee will be due and proof of 15 CE credits may be requested. Based upon the preliminary proposal from the Board of Veterinary Medicine, the cost of licensure will be very similar to certification, except for a few extra fees with the initial license. So you can see right now, MVMA's current certification is $75. What is being proposed for the Board of Veterinary Medicine is the $50 application fee, the $25 jurisprudence exam, and that is an open book exam that just tests our knowledge of the veterinary laws in Minnesota, along with a criminal background check. The initial credential is for 2 years. The renewal fee will be $100 with the Board of Vet Med. Current MVMA certification ranges between $75 and $115. And then our CE credits, we have proposed an increase of 15 to be better aligned with the national average. The similar percentage of medical requirements that MVMA currently uses will be established with the Board of Veterinary Medicine. All right, I'll turn it over to Dr. Bailey now.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. As Kim mentioned in one of our earlier slides, there's been a significant drop off in the number of technicians certifying with MVMA. The really big drop, the peak year was 2017. Well, coincidentally, that's around the same time that we had a significant change in the number of vet tech programs. I think many of you are aware that it wasn't so terribly long ago that we had 12 AVMA accredited veterinary technician programs here in Minnesota. Now, because of the closures of so many of the schools, there are just 4. And that's not just a Minnesota thing. That's been a nationwide trend, although I do see some new schools coming online in some of the other states, and that's not happening in Minnesota currently. Next slide, please. So the 4 colleges right now are DCTC, Dakota County Technical College there in Rosemont, Rochester Community and Technical College, of course, in Rochester, Ridgewater College in Wilmer, and then Minnesota North, which was previously called Vermilion Community College, and that's up in Ely. And DCTC and Minnesota North are the 2 newest colleges. Another relatively close college for us is Northwoods Technical College in New Richmond, Wisconsin. That's relatively close to the Twin Cities. And of course, we've got the 4-year NDSU program in Fargo. The other thing that we talk about is the advantage and availability of online programs. And there's really a number of things that have happened that we're seeing. A number of our graduates do not sit for the veterinary technician national exam. A lot of the programs are seeing that. And I think we're also seeing that some of the students are dropping out of school when they learn that they do not need a degree because they can get a job working as a veterinary technician the way it is. One of the things that's come up in our conversations over the last couple of years is, why doesn't MVMA work to try to help colleges get more vet tech programs started? And that's a great question. As chairperson of the MVMA's Veterinary Technician Committee, we always get a report from the schools. And at the September 2022 meeting, I had purposely asked the programs to tell us what they look like from a capacity standpoint. And none of them were at full capacity, and they do not have a waiting list. So our interpretation would be is that right now there's not the demand that there used to be for the schools. And yet we continue to look at that as another one of those pieces of the puzzle. Next slide, please. So we've got bills out there, and I did forward the bill numbers, and I saw that Heidi did go ahead and put those bills up there for you. So there is a bill in both the Senate and the House of Minnesota. Just last week, Monday, on the 20th of February, we did have a hearing in the Senate side, and the hearing went very well. So within the bills is an increased scope of practice, and that would allow licensed veterinary technicians to supervise those tasks that are delegated by the veterinarian to any unlicensed personnel. I just want to mention that the way the law is written right now, 2 significant things. One is that the veterinarian is supposed to legally be within visual or audible range of any animal that's being worked on by any unlicensed employee. And by unlicensed employee, what that means is, according to Minnesota law, The only one that's recognized in the Veterinary Practice Act is the veterinarian. So everyone else, including all of our certified veterinary technicians, are considered unlicensed employees. So if this bill is to go through, if we were to get licensure, all of our licensed vet techs would be able to supervise veterinary technician or the veterinary assistants and make it much more efficient for veterinarians who could be potentially off-site. And we see this is going to improve practice productivity for all sorts of practices, both rural as well as metro practices. It would allow remote supervision so that potentially a veterinary technician could go to a farm or could be called by the veterinarian who's coming back from lunch or a farm call and be instructed to go ahead and start things without the veterinarian being on site. And of course, for those that are concerned, the licensed veterinarian is the only person that can continue to diagnose, prognose, prescribe, and perform surgery. Next slide, please. It's really important that we not harm practices. Early on, there was discussion about that we should make this a mandatory requirement for licensure, but we really had a lot of concern by veterinary practices throughout the state that they might not be able to hire who they needed to continue the job, to continue the work that they've got to do. So it's important that everybody understand that practice can hire whoever they want to fill out their team and be able to do what work they need to do. We do continue to believe, though, that by licensure of the veterinary technician, we're going to improve consumer protection and public safety because of all the training and background of veterinary technician. So then the question comes up about those who would grandfather in. And my opinion is that overall, we will continue to raise up the status of veterinary medicine because even those that would grandfather in without having gone to school, without having taken the VTNE, will be under the same continuing education requirements as Kim has talked about. So overall, it's going to improve practice of veterinary medicine and public safety, consumer protection. One of the other things that's really interesting as chair at the MVMA of the Vet Tech Committee is that I hear of issues that come before the MVMA involving veterinary technicians. And so there's been reports of a veterinary technician that stole a client's credit card and started using it for personal purchases. And there's been just recently two notifications. One came to the Board of Veterinary Medicine and one to the MVMA about veterinary technicians that have been involved in the diversion or the theft of controlled substances for their own personal use. And honestly, there's nothing that MVMA can do because it's a voluntary certification. So we believe with licensure, there would be oversight for drug diversions and any misconduct through the supervision by the Board of Veterinary Medicine. A question that always comes up is, would veterinary technicians need to carry their own liability insurance? And the answer is simply is no. Veterinary technicians would not need to carry their own insurance. And in fact, there is no insurance offered through the AVMA's Professional Liability Insurance Trust. Next slide, please. So I think as I look at the clock, I know that we are right on time and we would open that up for any questions. I don't see any that have come through so far, Heidi. Maybe.
I did send a few ahead of time, Dr.
Okay,
Bailey.
great.
And by the way, I apologize for pronouncing your name incorrectly.
No
and you're
worries.
so gracious for never pointing it out to me. I do have a few questions, and I think many of these were answered by your presentation, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to answer them again. So the first one, how will this affect people currently filling that role who are not certified?
So I can take that one. So basically, it will not affect them in what they're currently doing in their job or how the practice operates, other than we would have title protection. So if they did not pursue getting their licensure, they would need to refer to themselves as a veterinary assistant moving forward.
Perfect, thank you. And then let's see. This is kind of a big question. Through your work and research for this bill, what steps do you think will be most effective towards helping resolve the tech shortage?
I think it's keeping them in the profession. when we've dropped out so many veterinary technicians, when their career life expectancy has dropped to 4 years, we have got to figure out strategies to keep them in the profession. And as I interpret the surveys from NAFTA, it's clear that veterinary technicians want title protection. They want to have increased utilization. So one of the other strategies that we're doing at MVMA is working with AVMA on a technician, our veterinary technician utilization inventory. And that I've talked about this for over a year, but it is still coming from AVMA.
Okay, and then let's see. How is another big question. How do we get people interested in the field?
That's a very complex question, and I think
Yeah.
it applies to both veterinarians and veterinary technicians. And frankly, I think it starts with all of us that are in the career. So many clinics have gotten busy, or because of COVID, because of liability issues, they don't let young people come in and see what we do. And I frankly, I think we need to figure out how to let young people get interested, and all people get interested in this as a career field.
That's a
I
great
would
answer.
just add on to that I also feel like we have to rebuild this profession. For those younger people, vet tech schools didn't really get started until the 1970s. And so we started really building and having people interested in this profession. But now if they're only staying in it for 4 years, it's not something that people want to go to school for 2 to 4 years and only stay in the profession short term. So I feel like we have to build up the profession again, make it a worthwhile career that people can stay in long term. And then I think we will get to the point where we will be drawing in more students, and then we can talk about building more vet tech programs to accommodate all of them.
Kim, can you put up the next slide, please? Just,
Yeah.
It's got our contact info. I know Heidi wants to wrap this up.
Yeah, that was all of the questions that were sent in. If anybody has a question for Kim or Dr. Bailey, you can pop it in the chat, but we can also return people to their day. I want to thank all of you for attending, as well as everyone who presented. We so appreciate your information, and the presentation was recorded. I believe as an attendee, you get sent the link automatically, but if not, I will get that out to you as well. I don't see any other questions. So thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Have a great day.